glimpses of enlightenment, unions with the divine, and so on. Whereas regular psychedelic experiences appeared to be understandable within a naturalistic worldview, those that are mystical reveal that there is an entirely different way of looking at the world that should not be ignored. This inspired me to approach the topic with greater humility and opened up a new world of philosophical wonder, one in which naturalism and mysticism can be integrated as equals. The fourth experience inverted my philosophical project. Up until that point, I was focused on using philosophy to make sense of psychedelic experiences. In this fourth experience, I had the insight that psychedelic experiences are themselves philosophical. It's difficult to describe what this means exactly. Part of this insight was personal in nature. Whatever it was that had originally drawn me to philosophy as an academic was the same thing drawing me into these experiences. However, it also seemed that this aspect of the experiences wasn't merely reflective of my own predispositions. As is well known, there is a plausible case to be made that many of the world's philosophical traditions find their origins in psychedelic experiences, whether they were induced with the help of substances such as kykeon in the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece, or soma of the Rig Veda, or the yogic and meditative practices of Hinduism and Buddhism. In short, it appears that these experiences can help us cultivate wisdom. They can help us become wiser in the sense of being better decision-makers, and they can also help us pursue a deeper form of wisdom. This, I think, is the wisdom that Socrates and Plato were in love with, the wisdom of the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, the wisdom of the Tao, the wisdom of Surawati's Illuminationism, and so on. Thus, I became fascinated with the idea that psychedelic experiences can help us do philosophy in the sense of loving and pursuing wisdom. Of course, there is nothing new under the sun. Others before me have had similar experiences, insights and thoughts, so I only mention them to help explain how the book came about. I was compelled to write it because I needed to reconcile all of these profound experiences and their unusual forms of knowledge and wisdom with the rest of my belief system. My background is primarily analytic and scientific. I grew up in an atheistic household and hold a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a PhD in analytical philosophy on the foundations of probability theory in statistical physics and mathematical biology. Because of my background and interest, I couldn't find anything written about psychedelic experiences that satisfied my philosophical curiosity. The scientific literature was helpful, but often too focused on specific empirical details, and there was almost nothing in analytic philosophy, although that is now changing rapidly. And while there was plenty of important work on and within the mystical traditions, it tended to downplay or just not even mention psychedelics. I also found that many of the books about psychedelics were either lacking in rigor or didn't dive into the philosophical questions that I found to be important and was passionate about. So I set out to write a book that I wish had existed when I first began having these experiences, something straightforward while still reasonably precise, and something philosophical but with a healthy respect for both naturalism and mysticism. As such, I think the book will be of value to others who are encountering these experiences for the first time, or are curious about them, or who share a similar background and mindset. Given the importance and timelines of the topic, I've also tried to make the book accessible to a wide audience. You don't need to be a philosopher or a scientist or a mystic to understand it, but you may need to look a few things up here and there. Those who are immersed in the field of psychedelic research may find that the book sometimes approaches things in a counterintuitive way, particularly my understanding of psychedelic experience as a kind of experience that can be had without consuming a psychedelic. However, based on feedback I've received, such readers and listeners tend to find that this counterintuitiveness eventually fades, and as one lets go of the tight association between psychedelic experiences and psychedelic substances, a more experiential and a priori perspective emerges that many find helpful. Others, who are more immersed in the mystical traditions, or wisdom traditions if you prefer, tend to have a different reaction. They find this perspective familiar and appealing, but also that the book can sometimes emphasize the mind at the expense of the body, heart and soul. This choice of emphasis mostly reflects one of the underlying goals of the book, to help show how an analytic